De gustibus non est disputandum, as my Latin master taught me. There is no accounting for taste. Now, I'm a 32nd Indian, but I do not care for Indian silver because I love the line of silver, as you've seen with the Amada dish. But the quality of craftsmanship, the quality of design in this Kutch Indian silver set, that would be about 1870, 1880. The quality is utterly stunning. But
I love that, but I can see how you love the beauty of the shine and of the flow of silver, whereas this...
We talk about the patina, not the shine.
Patina, sorry, yes.
If you wish.
Of course.
But it's a very fine piece, but not for me.
I am educated now, thank you.
Something else to avoid is tourist tat. You can get it in many places of the world. That is Greek. Don't know when it was made, don't care, maybe in the 1980s, maybe a bit later. It is a copy, a very inferior copy, of an early Greek Stanmos-based urn. Utterly horrid. Anyone who buys it deserves what they get. But that is this particular salver. It was owned by the third and last Earl of Ravensworth, and I bought it at auction because I only saw it the morning of the sale online, and I put in a bid of £1,111.
How much?
1,111.
Wow.
And some innocent underbidder put in a bid of 1,100. I think there's a lesson for you all there. And it is 82 ounces. And
Proper heavy, and
it's actually a bit too heavy for a butler to go round with it if it's got drinks on it. But it was a wedding present to the Earl's nephew.
Stunning piece.
And it is quite lovely. And I didn't pay a lot more than the
scrap
than the scrap value. Talked about the effect of light. This is a little Mexican dish, which don't like the legs, but the shape, the design is lovely. It shows shows light.
Is it a typical Mexican shape?
You don't find it anywhere else. I wouldn't say it's typical Mexican, but it's rare anywhere else. And it seems a shame to put anything in it, doesn't it? You just leave it out for people to admire. There's something important on silver, the older the more important, which is the patina. There have been some silver experts who think that patina is the only thing that matters. A great silver man called John Luddington wasn't interested in anything that didn't have an undamaged patina. Normally, when I buy a piece of silver that needs any work, I ask my silversmith, can he mend it without damaging the patina, without detracting or degrading it? And if he says no, I will say, make it good only to the extent it doesn't damage the patina.
So the patina is the shine?
It's actually the depth,
okay,
of the appearance, the luster. And by looking at that, an experienced
is
silver...
it patina or patina? I mean...
Patina.
Patina,
Patina is
tomato.
usual, but when anyone accuses me of mispronouncing anything, I say, yes, you're quite right, it's a rather archaic pronunciation. But patina, unless something has been kept in a black velvet bag in a bank's vault for 150 years, can give you a very good idea of how old it is. As I mentioned before, you have the machine age coming in with George IV. Very sad, but as we have seen from that centrepiece made by the Bishopsland student, Silversmithing is not dead. It's a much smaller craft than it was, and a friend of mine in America who ran the American Silversmiths Association said he doubts there are 3 people left in America who can make a silver tray. Now, to make a silver tray, and in this context a salver is a silver tray, like this Ravensworth salver, is very, very difficult, because the thing is so likely to get faintly out of true. But the art is still there. The craftsmanship is still there, even if we've got to wait 100 years before we can afford to buy it, because made new it's so expensive. We have touched on the fluidity.
So heraldry, I mean, you've got the coat of arms here. I find that fascinating, because families did their own coats of arms for their own dinnerware and so forth. And
they got it from the College of Arms. Note, there is no such thing as a College of Heralds.
Okay.
And it can teach you a great deal about a piece of silver, particularly the provenance. And if something has the arms of the Dukes of Beaufort on it, for example, that makes it far more valuable, because we're all snobs, particularly auctioneers and silver collectors. This is an interesting pot. I bought it on eBay for about half what it's worth, because the innocent vendor listed it as AF. So everyone who knew anything about anything thought, oh, as found.
As found, yeah.
As found is what you generally never buy, because
there's something wrong with
there's
it.
something seriously wrong with it. But actually, I said to myself when I looked at it, that's not as found. It turns out that this pot was made by Andrew Fogelberg in 1778. Great Anglo-Swedish silversmith. And Paul Storr, another great silversmith, was one of his apprentices. Now, so well done, Phelps, is
well
what
done,
I said to
that's
my
amazing.
Phelps. This is museum quality silversmithing. And it has on it a coat of arms. So I went to Luke Schrager, probably the last silver dealer left, who actually can talk intelligently about heraldry. And Luke researched...
Pass me the pot quick, I'm just going to have a quick look for the camera,
Luke,
for the viewer.
Luke researched the arms for me.
Yes.
And those arms are Fury of Westminster. The mullet engraved on the coffee pot is more similar to a Star of David, but still a 6-pointed star. The wife's side is quite worn, but appears to be... And then there's a heraldic description. Now, that
well
was...
spotted, though, for that. It's a beautiful piece.
It wasn't...
Did you steal it? Did you steal it? I mean, stealing it, you got it for a good price.
I got it dirt cheap, because it was marked as found. The coat of arms on that particular piece didn't tell us very much. We couldn't find anything out about Fury of Westminster. Didn't go to the College of Arms, where I might have found a bit more. But it just adds a bit of interest. And if, when I'm dead, my children and partner sell that pot, the fact we know what the arms are will add to the value, and I won't be around, so that's two questions. So that's absolutely fine. The Earls of Ravensworth, by the way, have died out, but the barony of Ravensworth continues. This is a 1778 teapot by Robert Hennell II. It is probably the best piece I have in my collection, although not the most valuable nor the oldest. It is perfect. It has got the corrugated channels. It's got some nondescript arms on the other side, but the point to look out for, the finial and the handle are both original, and match each other. Too often you
The
may...
colour's just
Yeah.
singing through, so it must have been covered up for a long period of time, really.
Maybe. And it is a joy. One of the small points to look out for is to make sure nobody's added a cheap modern plastic finial to an old pot. Another small point there is there's a flush hinge here, which is always a point of quality. It doesn't mean the lack of a flush. That is a proud bracket hinge, not the most elegant form, but very beautifully done there. But how much better to have the flush hinge.
The flush hinge is so much more beautiful.
Takes a lot more craftsmanship and time. We're now coming on to a quick run round of some of the extraordinary things. There's not a lot of expensive silver around. Too expensive for a cheap thrill. Not a lot of erotic silver around, sorry, too expensive for a cheap thrill. That is modern, made in Thailand. It's called a bell. And, you know, if you like that sort of thing, well, that's the sort of thing you like. But you have to... There's not a lot around, but unfortunately, the Chinese have been making, on commission for dodgy dealers, thousands of fakes of things. For example,
How can you tell a fake?
Comes to that, particularly guilloche or enamel. On old plain cigarette cases, for example. The guilloche, if you put it to your teeth, feels like glass.
What is guilloche?
Guilloche is an enamel made of powdered glass, French invention, coming in like Joseph's coat in many colours. And you can test it with your teeth very gently. The real enamel, of whatever form, slightly hard, slightly glassy. The fakes are made with resin enamel, which, put it to your teeth, it feels plasticky. There are, in fact, some very fine, mainly Austrian, cigarette cases with erotic images, but they have a semi-secret panel inside. So you hand your cigarette case to your father-in-law, and then, and it seems perfectly innocent, you hand it to your mates, and you show the panel of the lewd lady.
Well, we've sold a lot of those in my auction house over time,
Which
and they do a lot of copies as well. I have noticed that over the years.
Now, there's also politically incorrect silver, which I find enormous fun. Now, some idiot advertised this as an anti-slavery crest on a silver mug. Probably, said the vendor, the wife of an anti-slavery campaigner. The Anti-Slavery League was formed 1 year later. That's 1802. What total and utter rubbish. This goes back to heraldry being so useful. If you look up for a negress head in heraldic directories, or you ask Luke Schrager, you discover that virtually every family with a negress head or a black gentleman's head was in fact a slave owner and a slave trader, and not an anti-slavery campaigner. And if indeed that had been somebody's wife, they would have given her a much more attractive nose, whether
Very large conch on that one.
Whether she had it or not. I don't know if we've got any. We'll get onto that in a moment. But there are other things that the self-appointed apostles of political correctness dislike because they're not meeting their own self-appointed rules. We could go in there if you want me to, but time moves on. This is silly silver. That, believe it or not, is a bookmark.
Oh my goodness.
And it's made by people like Asprey and Cartier and Tiffany, for people with more money than taste to give to their friends with more money than taste. And there are lots of bits of silly silver too. Ugly silver. Now, I said to you earlier, Addison, that there'll always be someone to love any piece of silver. And that was sold by a friend of mine on eBay, and somebody bought it. God knows why. I wouldn't even pay the melt value for something as ugly as that, which, as you can work out, is supposed to be a salt cellar. Witty silver. I love the little duck with the umbrella. Absolutely sweet. Don't know anything about it. It's not hallmark, but it's silver. Whereas you may have heard the expression, well, you certainly heard the expression, rat tail applied to cutlery or flatware. And there you have a rat tail spoon. But you very rarely see something as witty as that one. Now, I don't know if you can guess what that's for. There's a dining club in London that meets about 4 times a year, and every member has to bring along something in silver whose use is unknown. Can you guess what that's for?
Is it a knife rest?
You're 50% right. It's actually a finger rest. So when you are next having your nails painted bright vermilion, Addison, you put your finger there, and the sexy young lady who's doing your nails will then paint them bright vermilion.
Fantastic.
Or
I have to get one for my wife.
yes, they come to market fairly rarely. It's only the second one I've ever seen. Now, why? That is solid silver.
Silver clothes peg.
It's a silver clothes peg, which probably does a very good job as a paperclip. But tell me, Addison, doesn't a paperclip do the job just as well?
Yes, I agree.
So that, broadly, is the beauty of silver. But remember one thing. Only buy silver because it tugs at the heartstrings, because you love silver. If you don't love silver, invest in pork belly futures or something else. Okay. And if you never pay more for a piece of silver than it's worth to you, you can never pay too much.
If you love it, buy it.
Yes.
Barry, that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for coming in, sir. And have you got any tips for the viewers if they want to buy, apart from obviously if you love it and it tugs your heartstrings, if it's an investment buy, are there any tips that you could think for them to just little mistakes that could come up if they're looking for something to invest in or to buy?
If you're buying a priceless ewer by someone like Paul de Lamry, and I don't think we'll ever see any come to market again, the metal value is irrelevant. If you're paying £100,000 for a piece, the cost of the silver is neither here nor there. One of the advantages of being poor, like me, is if you're buying 19th or 20th century silver, you have a benchmark, which is the metal value. Now, this is a benchmark, nothing more. And it's very useful, for example, if you're comparing 2 bits of late 19th century silver and seeing how much per ounce they're being sold for. It helps. And you look at this little pot, which is one of my favourites. When the silver, this is Mappin and Webb, 1939, London, bachelor coffee pot. I bought this when the silver price was $12.50 an ounce at about $15 an ounce. The price at the moment's about $20 an ounce. Now, I didn't buy it because it was not very much more than the metal value. I bought it because I love the line, because it's graceful, because it's beautiful, because it appealed to me. So that is the first thing. The appeal, the benchmark of metal value, unless you're going very early when it becomes less and less important. You might note on here we actually have a much more discreet bracket hinge than we saw on the Fogelberg coffee pot. Now, ideally, you want to look at everything you buy. Now, if you're buying on eBay, this is not possible. And one thing to note about eBay is steer clear of anyone who lists no returns under any circumstances. They're probably selling you rubbish, and anyway it's not true, because if there are significant faults not mentioned, you can send it back and call in the eBay police if there's any problem. So inspect wherever you
And
can.
if you're buying at auction, do the same thing. At least you can pick it up and see it.
If you're buying at auction, you can go along and see it. But auctioneers tend to be slightly more limited in number than the vendors on eBay. Yeah. So the auctioneers can usually be better trusted. Most of them have a reputation to safeguard. Although once or twice I bought things on eBay and I've said to the vendor, hey, this is not quite what you described, and they've taken it back without quibble.
Most auctioneers are very good like that. We do stand by that. We do stand by that. If we say it's Georgian and it's Victorian, then we'll always.
Of course.
There was a couple of stories that you mentioned earlier when we were chatting earlier, like the Hunt brothers. You're going to tell us a little bit about the Hunt brothers. They're quite fascinating, I thought.
Now, this appeals to me both as a financial journalist, as an economist, and as a silver lover. In 1978. The Hunt brothers, whose daddy made their fortune in oil in Texas, decided to corner the silver market. Now, anyone like me, simple economist, financial journalist, could have told them how foolish they were. I'll come to that in a moment. And the price of silver, as the Hunt brothers tried to corner the market buying futures and so on, went up from something like $8 to $49.50 an ounce.
Oh my goodness.
And then the Chicago Commodities Exchange changed the rules, tweaked the rules, just a tiny bit. It was all to do with dates of delivery and that sort of thing. And the price of silver the next day went down, 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 down. Well, the Hunt brothers couldn't meet their commitments. Well, I've got no sympathy for the Hunt brothers.
And they went out and
they went out. But but the tragedy, and it makes me feel like weeping even now, is that an awful lot of very fine silver was melted down because there weren't enough buyers around.
We had a similar thing a few years ago, I think, when the silver went up to about £30 an ounce for one day. I had £1 million
there was a spike, but we didn't have much meltdown. But if you are thinking of trying to corner the market in a commodity, don't go for anything so widely traded as silver. Did you know, for example, Addison, there's a futures market in molybdenum? Go and corner something else and leave silver lovers to the silver market.
Fair enough. Barry, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. And I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to build this up again and give him a little plug here. The Silver Collector's Lexicon by Barry Phelps. It's a super easy read. It's all done A to Z. Really interesting. And Barry, you've been fantastically interesting. Thank you so much for coming in, sir. And ladies... I'd just like to let you know that you will get your next lecture delivered to your inbox in about 14 days. And Barry, once again, thank you for coming in, sir.
You're welcome. I enjoyed talking.
Cheers. Thank you, Barry.